Welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we help you make marriage real, fun, and simple. Each week, we have honest conversations about one simple thing that can make your marriage better. Because when your marriage is better, everything's better. I'm CJ, and I'm happy to be here today with our resident newlywed, Afton.
Hiya.
And I'm also excited that we have our 22-year marriage veteran. He's an author, speaker, and the director of marriedpeople.org, Ted Lowe.
Hey, you guys.
Well, I'm so excited about today's episode, but before we jump into our conversation, Ted, is it okay if we remind our listeners what this podcast is really all about? Because when people hear marriage podcast, that's like, there's a lot of things that come to mind, and 90% of them are probably not real exciting, right?
Absolutely. That's why we make this one totally different, right, Afton?
Yes.
Totally different. So we're going to talk about, first, just really quickly, what this podcast is not.
This podcast is not just for my mom and dad's marriage.
This podcast is not just for couples in crisis.
This podcast is not just for couples who are perfect.
And it's not just for couples with kids, because I don't have kids. And it's not just for adding something else to your weekly to-do list.
And it's not just for resolving your issues.
And it's not just for fixing your spouse. But a little bit of fixing.
Hudson.
Your spouse, yes. My spouse,
okay,
yes.
Right. But really, honestly, more than anything, we want to help you discover that marriage is easier than you think. And today on the Married People Podcast, we're going to look at the question, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this, Ted. And I know you've probably heard this just a ton over the 16 years of working with couples. So the question is, why do we have serious fights about silly things? So Ted, why do we have serious fights as couples about just the most ridiculous, silly things?
Well, we'll get into that, but let's go first. I want to ask you guys this question. Do you think appliances should go on the counter or below the counter? Do you take them on and off each day, or you just leave them there?
Okay, I know the right answer to this, 100% the right answer.
Okay.
Because I read the Marie Kondo book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. So because I read that book, I 100% know that the answer is that they go under the counters. And you want to keep your counters clean, because clean counters means a clean brain, like a clean headspace.
Even the stuff you use every single day?
Yes.
So there's nothing on your counter at home?
A coffee maker.
So, okay, but why is that? That's an appliance.
That brings happiness to me, though, in a way where when I pass it, I'm like, I love coffee.
Hold on. So your appliances are okay to stay, but maybe not Hudson's.
I would say the coffee maker is our mutual happy appliance.
Okay, so it's bringing mutual joy. Okay.
Yeah, so that one stays.
All right, because it makes zero sense to me whatsoever. Zero sense. It's been going on for 22 years. You put the toaster up, you put the toaster down, you put the toaster up, you put the toaster down. And one day, my 5-year-old daughter says, "Hey, Mommy, I've got a great idea. Why don't we leave the toaster out so we don't have to put it up and down it every day?" And I'm like, see? She gets it. She fully gets it. Nancy's she trumped us both.
I don't get it. I go one step further,
It was
Ted.
a risky move for your 5-year-old to say that.
She's just speaking God's truth into our home.
No.
No?
No. Okay, all right. Let me ask you a question about my house. Okay, so just does it make sense for the person whose hair it is to get the hair out of the drain?
What? What?
Yeah.
Okay. In your opinion, whose job is it to clear the shower drain?
Oh, my goodness. So what are my options? Do you just leave it?
You or your wife.
It just gets clogged, and then you move.
And then you...
Right. Well, that's how you know we've stayed in this house too long.
It's like showering in the kiddie pool a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
Because the problem is, I shed an average amount, the amount any normal human girl probably sheds in the shower.
Okay.
And there's a cover, before the hair can actually go into the drainage system, and it helps for one shower, and then you're standing in water. So I just take it out when it gets full, and let all the hair just go down the normal drain.
Okay.
But I leave the actual cover there
with all this stuff
on it, because I'm not. That's very gross.
Yeah. Okay.
And I feel like Hudson's so much better at it than me when it comes to cleaning that off.
Hold on, time out. This is time once again for an Afton intervention. So let me get this straight. Mrs. Neat and Tidy over here,
Yes.
who values that.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Sheds like her sheepdog that she got when your husband was not home.
Yep.
Sheds like that. And then you think it's Hudson's job to get it?
Okay, I think it's Hudson's job to basically do any job that's very gross. So this is a silly fight we have every single day. We have one of those like charged vacuum cleaners that you can like take off the wall and charge without a cord.
Right.
And like the amount that it can vacuum is like the size of a coffee cup. So there's like a max amount on it, but immediately when you turn it on, it is max full every single time. Like you vacuum 1 foot and it is max
sounds like
full.
you have a very dirty floor.
I have a sheepdog.
Right, okay.
So,
Yes,
and
okay,
myself.
as we've learned, yes.
And Hudson every single time says, did you not see that there is a max number on this vacuum cleaner? There is a max amount. And I'm always like, yes, but I needed to clean the floor still, and I'm not cleaning it out because it's very gross. So he always has to clean it out, and that makes him very angry.
Oh, okay. CJ.
So I mean, I've been thinking too. So speaking of the silly fights, how do you decide we're going to get out of the home? We've been talking about the appliances, the vacuum, whatever. How do you decide where you're going to dinner on date night?
Easy.
Okay.
We're going to Chili's.
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 Chili's is your date night
Is
spot.
our number one. Every 5th of the month in my calendar, it says Chili's anniversary, and we celebrate the first time we ever went to Chili's together.
Wow.
So that was your first date to Chili's?
No, it was just the first time we went on a date to Chili's. I think it was like our 10th date.
So,
Love
But
that.
we celebrate the
So you
first
go
time
to
we went
Chili's once a month. So how do you decide where you're going to dinner other date nights, or do you guys only date once a month?
That's a very good question, CJ. Here's what we do to combat the going out to dinner blues.
Okay.
We keep a list on Hudson's phone, and anytime we're like, we should try that restaurant, we have to write it down, because when it comes to the time where you're like, oh,
that's
we gotta
smart.
pick, there's always those places that you're like, oh, we should have tried that place when we went, and we didn't.
Wow, that's good stuff. That's very
We
practical
still
stuff.
fight about it, but like now at least we have a list that like
A list to fight about.
A list to fight about.
Perfect. I love because it can absolutely ruin a date night. Like you get in, what do you want to do? I don't care what you want to do. It's kind of false humility, right? Like, oh, I just want to serve you by letting you pick. No, I'm just lazy.
Yeah.
And
I
want
don't
you
really know what I want.
I don't really know what I want. Do you know what I'm hungry for?
How do you and Nancy, Ted, how do you guys pick where to go?
How do we pick where to go? Like,
Is that an issue, or like you trying to figure stuff out there?
you know, here's the thing. The longer you're married, you can either get angry more or you could just let things go more. We've kind of moved into the let things go more. Like,
Okay.
with our crazy kids in life, like picking dinner or where we're going to go, it just doesn't have any emotional charge to it, really.
Fair.
And she is queen of eating salad, so it really doesn't matter where we go. She's going to get a salad, probably with chicken on it. So, it doesn't really matter. I told her, I said, I love you, but one of your flaws is you're not a foodie, which makes me really sad. I said, I hope you don't care like when we're retired. I hope you've given up the ghost by that point. But yeah, it's not a huge thing for us. We got a couple of go-tos.
Chili's and
Chili's.
Chili's,
They've-
Zoe's,
Yeah.
Zoe's,
Yeah, anything. I know if anywhere Greek food for my wife, she's gonna dig it.
So you guys are okay with the new Chili's? Like 2 for $20 is no longer a thing. It's 2 for $22 now. I don't know if you realize that.
yeah, you do get a dessert.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Chili's
Yeah.
did change their rewards program. It's plenty now, and I'm not like a super fan of that.
Right.
But
You're a fan of their previous
their
rewards.
previous rewards program was much more rewarding.
Okay. I've never known anybody that's gone to Chili's so much that they're that familiar with the transitions in their reward programs.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners are, CJ. So what about you guys? That's what you fight about. So like, what's your tactic?
Well, we have like a rotating 5 that kind of we use for the date night stuff. So we've got, and believe it or not, Chili's is on that list.
Of course
when
it
is. Especially, when it gets further into the month and you're like, okay, we've used up some of our date night
We want
budget.
something
We need
really
something
good.
Right? Yeah.
You're right.
Yes, we've used up some of our budget, and we want something that's really good.
need to go to Old
we need to go to Chili's. No, I mean it's like we start thinking about it like 3 days out. Like, okay, where do we want to go? Like
That's very intense. That's
like,
very intense.
Let's start thinking.
But really intentional, right, Ted? That's like a really intentional.
The days where you had that brain
time.
space and margin to go, we're going to think about where we're going to eat for 3 days. That is awesome.
So otherwise, if we start trying to figure it out, like, an hour before, like that's where.
It's very stressful.
So it's about getting ahead of the game.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where the silly fight happens. Like, where are we going to go to eat?
Right.
An
You
hour
guys are giving
before.
too many solutions because I think most of our listeners are going, we have a silly fight, so we have no answer for them.
Right.
But I do feel like there's lots of silly fights. There's silly fights about how to load the dishwasher. There's silly fights.
We've had that one.
Yeah, it's about how to load it, when to unload it, whose turn is it. So one of the number one tensions with couples is household chores and how that works out. It's amazing how much tension can come from that and expectations of what our spouse is supposed to do because of what mom did and what dad did. And so when we come into things with expectations, we tend to get frustrated about that, or we don't even appreciate those things.
So you think that's where a lot of our silly fights emerge, like what we grew up with, and now that's creating the tension that a lot of those things stem from?
Totally. It's hard to overemphasize how much family of origin, the family you grew up, impacts your marriage. All these things we swear we're never going to do. I mean, especially now that I have teenagers, I am my dad. I am my dad. And I love my dad, but my dad, would use guilt a lot. And I watch myself using guilt with my kids. And so it's the same thing with marriage. We bring in these things from the way we think that things are supposed to be done, and then our spouse doesn't do that because that's not how their family did it, and then there's all this tension. So
that's where you get the towels on the floor, we're going to have a fight about it kind of a thing.
Totally. I mean, my mom passed away when I was 10 years old, and so it's my dad and my brother and I. We were like bears with furniture. I mean, we grunted, like we didn't really had to talk. I mean, it was this big thing, and then I get married to Mrs. Clean. And her mom was very tidy too. And so I get married to that, and I didn't see messes. She sees them all the time. It's not just, it needs to be kind of straightened. It's kind of like, and so we had a housekeeper that come in and would pick up after us. And my dad never said, hey, you guys need to pick up after yourself. My brother would throw banana peels in the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that gross. Yeah, everybody's listening going, that's disgusting. But it was one of those things where I bring in two totally different bipolar opposites when it comes to that. And so there's so many tensions based on what we're expecting out of our spouse.
Yeah.
And with that expectation, there's not appreciation. So if our spouse does something that we do like, it's because we expected them to do it. We don't pause and say, thanks for doing that. Yeah. Why? Because we expected it. When we desire these things after them, it's a totally different deal. But these silly fights that we kind of laughing about now, we're talking about appliances and chilies and where to go and all, they can cause serious damage. So here's the deal. Silly fights cause serious damage. And I think a lot of times we have these fights about silly things. We don't share them with people that could speak some truth to us because it seems so silly. Like, how emotionally charged you got about the dishwasher, or you came in and the house was messy. You felt that, you argued with that. Somebody slammed the door, somebody walks out of the room, and that was kind of a big deal. But if you call a girlfriend, you talk to your buddy, and you say, hey, this is what happened, you feel kind of stupid.
Well, it's because you don't know if the towel's on the floor, but that's not really the problem. Like, I don't know. I don't go to a buddy and say, hey, I left my towel on the floor, and so now we had a silly fight about that. But it's hard to figure out, and it's hard to pause long enough to figure out what the thing is behind that. You see what I'm saying?
Right, and I don't think we think about what's behind it. And I think a lot of times fights can be the straw that broke the camel's back type of stuff. He's been messy, and then the toothbrush is not in the cup, and all of a sudden it's World War III, and he's thinking he's in trouble about that. You're doing all this because of a toothbrush, but it's been all these things, and that's the thing with silly fights is they build up, and they build up, and they build up, and then all of a sudden there's this big debate about it, and we feel like it's the thing we're fighting about, but it's not, because it's all these underlying messages of what it's saying to our spouse.
So this is so funny. We were talking about this earlier, but Hudson and I get in silly fights not often, and usually they don't feel serious at the time, but we did get into one maybe like a couple months back. And I thought I was making it very clear that I was upset, and I think he didn't recognize maybe that I was, but I'm like angry, and I'm talking to him about it, and I walk out of the room, and I slam the door, and I go sit on the living room couch, and I'm waiting for him to come and be okay, so let's talk about it and fix everything. And I wait 2 hours, and then I walk back into the room, and I'm like, hello, don't you know I'm upset out here? Why aren't you trying to fix this? Why aren't you trying to come and talk to me? And he literally was like, I didn't know that you were angry. It's like so, and now I'm like, okay, that's good to know. Like when I leave the room, he doesn't think, oh, she's angry. He thinks like, oh, she's leaving for a minute. And like, he didn't even recognize that a fight was happening.
And you're sitting there spewing going, hey.
I was so furious. I sat on the couch so furious. And then he's like, oh, I didn't know you were angry.
Oh, man. So, Ted, what I hear you saying, and you said this a few minutes ago, but silly fights can cause serious damage. So, basically, it's all silly, but it builds, and it builds, and it builds. So, what do we do? What do we do with that?
Well, here's the truth, and this is a little bit of tough truth, but we're going to get to a good spot, is our spouses don't bring out the worst in us. They reveal the brokenness in us. Let me say it again. Our spouses don't bring out the worst in us. They reveal the brokenness in us, because you get married and all of a sudden you get madder than you've ever been before. And you think, well, I didn't get this mad before we got married. Who's the problem? This person I married. Right. And what's happening is marriage, it's so intimate. It's so important. You're blended your life with one other person. Everything they say matters. Everything they do matters. And all of a sudden, these little silly things, it hits place. We'll say, he's so touchy about this. And I'm about to give you something I wish somebody had told us so many years ago that has changed everything for us. And it's this, is when your spouse's reaction does not match the situation, that's where they're touchy, and that's where they're probably wounded. And so when our spouse does this thing, and we almost get excited about it because we know for sure they're wrong. Right? Yeah. When their reaction does not match this situation, when they come in, I can't believe you're always, use words like always and never, leaving clothes thrown all over the house, and I feel so unappreciated. They're doing all that, and you're going, wait, I just left my shoes at a different place, and you're going, and we almost get self-righteous about that, going, this is unbelievable. Your reaction does not match the situation. But if we can pause and say, okay, there's where some pain is for them. Well, that's where we can be the relational hero from them. But again, it's so much easier just to want to be right. And when we fight to be right, we've all heard it, right? When you fight to win, we both lose. So what is that thing? If you're thinking through that right now, what is that thing that your spouse does where their reaction does not match the situation? What would that be for you guys? Or let me say it another way, because we're just focusing on ourselves here. Yeah. But what are those things for you? And I want you to, all this that are listening, I want you to think, what is that for your spouse? Because that's going to be your go and do.
So for me, like if I'm looking at do I overreact at a silly situation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I'm like, I don't know how this really connects, and maybe, I don't know. So, but like I overreact when technology doesn't work for me. Like, and specifically it's like the internet. So in our house, we pay the Comcast bill every month, and then, but like, once a week, it's just like I get nothing, and I'll blow up inside and sometimes outwardly, and just be like, why?
What does that look like for CJ?
I know.
Why
Could you
is the freaking internet not working at all? And like, Terry, can you please reset the internet, because I'm really frustrated right now.
Is that
and
it?
It's just
like,
that was a really adorable explosion.
Wait, CJ, please tell me it's worse than that.
I mean, it's worse than that, but I don't need this recorded and repeated. You know what I mean?
I would like to have it recorded,
I don't know what that
explosion.
I don't know what that is, and so like I overreact with that quite often, more often than I'd really like to admit. But I don't know where that comes from. Like, I don't know if that's connected to what you're saying as far as, it's connected to whatever.
Right. No, I think there are some deeper level things that we probably won't hit here. There's some great exercises where you can walk through what you're really fighting about. But I think why this matters to your marriage is you're bringing some angst and some frustration into the relationship, whether it's her fault or not. I remember we first got married, my family was pretty demonstrative about being frustrated. And so I was pretty demonstrative about being frustrated. And then Nancy would get angry with me about it. And I'm like, why are you getting angry about this? This isn't about you. She goes, but I don't want to be in the room with it.
Yeah.
And what that says to me is,
you're the Hulk.
You're the Hulk.
I don't want to be in the room with that.
I don't want to be in the room with the Hulk.
You don't want to see him angry.
Don't make me angry. You would like me when I'm angry. But it was really a lesson for me to go, okay, that helped me to understand, because what it was doing, it was leaking into the relationship with each other. So if she follows up with a question after I'm frustrated about the internet, I'm probably not going to be as compassionate and as loving and as attentive. And so it kind of leaks in. They talk about, when you're around people that are toxic, I'm going to give you an extreme example because obviously, CJ, you're not toxic, but when we're around a toxic people, it tends to leak into everything. And so when we have a toxic behavior like that, it leaks into the night, and it's all of a sudden. And I think there's a level for a woman, especially when a man is demonstrably frustrated. There's a safety issue for her at that point. Like
it does and I know it's my example. It's about the internet. It doesn't feel like it's about marriage, but it does carry into the rest of the evening. It sets the tone, and so that's why I think I kind of equate that overreaction in me to my marriage because it impacts it regularly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Guys, I already know mine, and I basically already know the answer to it. I'm going to tell you the story anyway. I've already said on this podcast, 5 o'clock to about 6:45 in the evening.
The sass zone.
That is my sass zone. Those are my sass hours, where I am the sassiest of the day. And let me just say that when I walk into the house at 5 o'clock or 5:30 and the house is a mess, everything inside of me turns in, I'm red inside. I'm so angry. So, usually if I walked in the house and my stepson's made a mess and Hudson's left stuff everywhere, I will literally walk into my room and close the door, and I will tell Hudson I'm not coming out of my room until this house is clean because I'm really mad about it. And I'll tell you what it is. When we got married, obviously you combine your stuff into one house.
Right.
And I'm not saying my stuff was
brought
better.
all of your dogs.
I'm not saying my stuff was better. I'm just saying that my stuff is the stuff that we kept because it was more usable for the family.
Give me an example.
After the intervention.
The couch, the couches, rugs. Tiny little I have these little hedgehog.
I can't drive by that.
I have these little hedgehog measuring cups. They're so cute. And I know how they're placed on the shelf. I know how they're placed. They're not for use. They're for looking at. And I know when someone's touched them.
Our hedgehog measuring things are only for looking at as well.
Yeah.
Obviously.
This is such a relatable example. Yeah.
And I'm like,
everybody's hedgehog ones are.
When my things are moved or dirty or messed up in any way, I get so angry because I'm like, you are disrespecting me when you disrespect my stuff.
When you disrespect the hedgehogs.
Isn't that so shallow?
Well, what you're saying is,
you're very shallow.
In those moments, maybe. But so what you're saying is that's when your reaction doesn't match the situation, is to go, I'm frustrated the house is messy, but I'm acting as if
it's the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah. And so it's those times where we're feeling those things. It's that time that those things come in together. And we talk a lot about, or I hope we talk a lot about on this podcast, is how do we have less moments of awful and more moments of awesome?
Yeah.
Because I think for us, especially when we first got married, and I think hopefully a lot of listeners will resonate with this, a lot of us don't have these huge dramatic stories about a tough marriage necessarily.
Right.
Some of our listeners will, but I think for a lot of us, we resonate with this thing of, we have some really awesome moments, but we have some really awful moments, and we're not really sure what's happening. And for a lot of people, they think, well, it's just the way it is. It is what it is. And the great news is it doesn't have to be it is what it is. We get to choose, and we talked about last time about have these micro moves towards each other. Have these micro moves to figure out how do we do this better?
Yeah.
How can I love better? How can my reaction start to match the situation? But also in our spouse is lovingly seeing that where they're touchy and really choosing love at that point. For me, my button or where I overreact is when I feel misunderstood.
So you blow up at Nancy, or you overreact in the moments you feel like she doesn't understand you?
Yeah, when I feel misunderstood, it freaks me out all the way because I kind of grew up feeling pretty much misunderstood. And so that button, and I try to be so intentional. And so when things are just miscommunicated, when I feel like she doesn't understand me, especially in a frustrated way, it freaks me out. In my situation, my reaction does not match the situation.
Yeah.
And I think for her, where she would say her reaction doesn't match the situation, is if she ever thinks that I'm frustrated with her, or I've gotten we've laughed before that if we were married to regular people, we'd be in a lot of trouble with verbally because we're so sensitive.
Yeah.
So I think for her, and her mother has told me before, she's the most sensitive child on the planet. And my parents would say the same thing, that we're both very, very touchy and very, very sensitive. And so we're very, very careful with each other. But to the point where it doesn't even make sense. And like, we'll be at a baseball game and hear other parents and they're, yelling at each other and shouting at each other. And we're like, dude, we would melt in the bleachers right now if that happened. But I think it's knowing that other one and knowing where they're touchy. And you think about, okay, where your spouse is touchy, where it doesn't make the most sense, there is a lot of room for damage right there in that spot, because we push back there more than any other place typically where they're not making sense. If we can be the relationship hero here and say, all right, instead of me looking at that as this is the one place I feel 100% right, is we can go, this is one place where I can be 100% loving and give them a break, because we all bring baggage, just like we all bring furniture. Yeah. We all bring baggage into a relationship, and we get to choose how we respond. And you just think about your spouse. They trusted you with a lot of the quality of their life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if our spouse is going to live with somebody that's gentle and compassionate and considerate, it is because we are choosing to be that spouse. We get to choose that for them. And that's what I get so excited about people listening, no matter where they are, if they're struggling or they're just doing okay, they're just kind of surviving, or they're thriving, is to say, we get to pick. We get to pick our attitude, because we pick it all day for everybody else, right? We give everybody else. Man, we pull out all the skills at work. We want people, they want to respect our ideas. We know if we treated them, inconsiderately, or if we were too touchy there, that they are, we might lose our job. Or if we treat our friends that way, they do. They'll find a new friend. And then we come home, and it's safe. And we can use that safety for
we bring down our guard.
Oh, we drop our guard, and they get the worst of us or what's left of us.
We turn the sass up.
We turn that sass up because we can. Because if we turn the sass up at work, we get in trouble. If we turn the sass up with anybody else, I just think we get to choose.
But Hudson's locked in. He can't leave.
Sorry.
He's locked in.
You can just drop that guard and just let it fly.
So just sass it up. Well, we're gonna talk about that after, right?
All right, Ted. So just to kind of boil everything down here, what do we do the next time we feel like our spouse is overreacting to a situation?
Yep, great question. And that's a perfect setup to the thing we want to do here every week on the podcast, is give people just one simple thing. We've talked about a lot of different things, a lot of great things. But again, to boil it down so the listener doesn't go away going, wow, that was great, I don't know what to do with it, right?
Right.
So here's our one simple thing, and this is going to sound like an oversimplification, but it is, after all, one simple thing, is the next time our spouse's reaction doesn't match the situation, which will probably happen this week, and it could, to varying degrees.
Yeah.
You ready? It's very simple. Change your reaction. You can't control their reaction. You can't control how it makes them feel. You can't say to them, I can't believe you feel this way. I was just saying, I was just kidding. It doesn't matter. We need to change our reaction in that situation. And again, that is the place where we can love them really, really well. And so when things come up this week, and I have a feeling that they will come up, is anytime you've got an opportunity to change your reaction from a negative one to a positive, that's one of those things that we called last week a micro move. That is a micro move in their direction. And it may freak them out at first. I mean, like they may, come after you a little bit. Like, what is this? Because you're throwing off the balance of things. You're throwing out the natural order of things, and they don't always respond with, oh, you're ministering to my wounded soul. Like it may freak them out. You may not get, and that's the thing. I think a lot of times when people make these micro moves, their spouse doesn't give them this big response. Because one, maybe they don't know what to do with it. Two, maybe they didn't notice it. Like he didn't notice that you were in the room angry. Like we miss cues with each other. And then if the time is appropriate, just to say, hey, I know every time we talk about money that it's pushing some buttons with you. And I just want you to know that matters to me too. And I'm going to try to love you well there.
So let me just poke just a little bit further.
Please.
So, not that this is our situation. I was just thinking, but you put the forks in the dishwasher the wrong way. They needed to go the right way, and there's an overreaction in that moment. What would you say? And the person is getting, fired up. Like, we've talked about this before, that go in this way. So what's your suggested reaction in that moment? Is it?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Like it is those moments where you, I mean, and this, again, I think marriage is easy to understand. It's not always easy to live out. See,
Yeah.
we've convinced people that marriage is so complicated. It's really easier, but it's not easy to live out. So those are those moments, again, that doesn't match the situation. We say to her, I'm sorry. I know you've told me this before, and you do it. And boy, that goes, and it's like somebody taking a file to your spinal column. Like, oh, I'm sorry. I know that's pretty graphic, huh? But it's like, it's one of those, it doesn't feel natural to us. It doesn't feel natural to them. And so these moments may not be these Kodak moments or these beautiful moments of connection. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, we start making these little moves, and they see it. So give them space. And I think, especially for men, they will try things. Their spouse doesn't give them this clap and way to go, and they're out. We don't know what to, and men, and ladies, here's the thing. You do these great things for us, and we don't say, hey, oh, thank you so much. That meant so much to me. We cock our heads and go, thanks. At most. But it doesn't mean that that's not the right move, and it doesn't mean that those moves don't add up over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm. It does.
Okay, so I have a question then. Is the right reaction, because here's what I do. When Hudson, I can feel Hudson start to, get a little bit okay, this is happening. I do this.
Okay, this is happening.
I look at him in the eye, and I raise my eyebrows as high as they will go, and I just look at him. And I'm silent. And I'm basically what I'm saying is, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this right now? Is that a good reaction, or is that a bad reaction?
Because I love you, I'm going to speak some truth, and I'm going to go ahead and slide that into not the bad category, but the inexperienced category.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure things out category.
Because I'm not going to say anything in that moment, because who knows what's going to come out of my mouth.
Yeah. Well,
so I just
nobody.
look.
Well,
Actually,
what do they say about
nobody
communication?
knows.
Only 20% of communication is words, right? And the rest is tone and body language, emojis. Exactly. You're a walk-in, real emoji right there in front of him. And our listeners, of course, can't see this, but you also, as you're raising your eyebrow, you got your hands on your hips. And I think you mentioned last episode about not being the parent. This seems, love ya, feels kind of parental to me. Do you want to do this?
It does feel parental.
Do you also count down 3?
Yeah. It is.
You have 3 seconds.
Or our little recesses, you want some of this kind of thing?
Yeah.
You want some of this?
Are you sure you want to go there?
Are you going to go there?
I'm ready to go there.
Right. So I think it's those moments, and that's going to be, and again, it is so difficult when we know that we're right to not leverage that to hurt them, which ultimately disconnects us. So it's those moments. And when we have other people in our lives, let's take this out of context of marriage for just a moment, because sometimes with marriage, you can't see the forest for the trees. Think about the people outside of marriage that you're really drawn to. Who are those people? It's the people that cut you a break when you're frustrated, that allow you to be you. They're the ones that give a gift without expecting one to return. They're the ones that are careful with their words. I mean, think about what kind of person that we're drawn to. And again, I think if we can put some of our people skills that we have with everybody else to our spouse, I really believe if most people treated their spouse as good as they do coworkers, most marriages would be fine. It would do 180s for a lot of marriages to come in going, okay, I'm frustrated with this coworker right now.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let him know. I'm going to listen. I'm going to process. I'm going to let them know that I understand. If we can just bring those same skills that we have in our toolbox, just bring them on home. Just bring those suckers on home and give the one. Because here's the thing. Long after we're irrelevant at work, we're going to be relevant at home. And sometimes, oh my goodness, we give
you could put that on a Instagram image.
That I think I probably stole it from Andy Stanley, which is half my life, or just different leaders. I don't have an original thought, but I do rip it off from a lot of sources. But
so what you're saying is, if we get angry at our spouse, we should take out our burn book and just write everything we want to say in that moment, and then just put it back under our bed.
Again, nonverbals. If they're seeing you writing in the book and then see you put it under the mattress where they can find it, probably not effective. We know when we're making the face, when we're shutting the door a little bit louder than we should. We
do know. That is so funny. It's just it's just.
But it's a reaction,
right?
Because you feel like you feel like it's the natural next thing to do. You're reacting to their reaction, so you feel like, okay, it's appropriate for me to act to you this way because you're going a little bit crazy right now.
Perfect. And I think that if everybody's listening going, yes, it is a reaction. You are reacting to an action. And when, again, I know I keep saying this, but it's just something, gosh, we can wrap our heads around this, it's when those reactions are not, they're not okay. And when their reactions are not okay, those are the moments. And it's so difficult, but if we can see those as those moments, I think a lot of times one of the things that softens our heart towards our spouse is to think about them as a younger them. Think about what they went through growing up. Thinking about, I actually have on my desk a picture of my wife when she's a little girl. And I did that because you start saying, this is her all grown up, And so I think anything that makes you empathetic toward your spouse.
So it just reminds you of everything she's been through and gives you like context for where she is, and who she is today in your marriage.
Right. And it was a little girl that dreamed about being married one day, right? It's a little girl that planned her wedding since she got Barbie and Ken. And so she planned how Ken, and I imagine Ken treated Barbie pretty darn good. And so I am unfortunately her Ken, like no hair on the top of my head. I'm like bald Ken, which they need to come out with, by the way.
Yeah, equality.
But I guess I think we just, equality. Yes.
Equality.
Yeah. For the bald man, right?
Or the bearded man.
I think they've got a bearded Ken now.
Do they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do.
Is it bearded or is
It's
it
just
stubble?
sprayed.
Because there's
It's
a
sprayed.
difference.
Yeah, I don't think it's part of the actual architecture of the doll.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, but like, there's like the stubble, and then there's like
There's
a
stubble
beard.
G.I.
A beard.
Joe.
I think there's probably a
Okay,
beard.
I haven't looked that up recently.
For my reactions though, when it starts getting real in the house, what I try to ask myself is, what is the most helpful reaction right now? Like,
great
what's
question.
actually going to be helpful in this situation? Because I can make it like, I can escalate the situation and make it way worse and make a face. But really, like, what's going to be helpful right now? Because they're obviously feeling something, and how can I be helpful?
Afton, that's gold. That is absolute gold. So practical for people to say, what you say, you've been married less than 2 years, right? A year and a half. Like, this is great marriage advice for people who've been married forever. What is helpful? One of the best lines I got from Afton, parenting wise, was raising teenagers is like raising adults that are really bad at being adults.
Yeah, like really terrible adults.
Really terrible adults.
Yeah.
And so but that is such a good principle of saying, okay, because he's a terrible adult, what's helpful in this situation, but also for our spouse. That is so powerful, Afton, very much. And this is all we're talking about, is how do you change reactions in these tough situations?
Okay, guys, so let's make this even more personal. So what are we going to do? Afton, what are you going to do either the next time you catch yourself overreacting or the next time you feel like your spouse is overreacting? Like, what is your reaction in that moment?
So, okay, I have realized that I like feel the emotions so much. Like when I'm angry, I like see red and I like don't think logically anymore. And when I feel like I'm like overreacting to something, like I'm mad or I'm sad or I'm whatever, like I just like let my emotions go, like unfiltered emotions. So I feel like what I'm trying to practice and what I'm really going to work on this week, and that's my one takeaway this week, is going to be like when I feel like my emotions are like getting to a place where it's just not going to be a helpful situation no matter what comes out of my mouth or is portrayed through my facial expressions.
Right.
I'm going to like just take a breath. Like honestly, like I think just like taking a full deep breath and being like, okay, what is going to be helpful here? And like I have a couple seconds here to make a choice. Even if it's just like a 5-second like, okay, what's my next move? Like, don't let the emotions take hold of me and just kind of like try really hard to think in a logical way instead of my immediate like, okay, this situation's happening and I got to give sass back to it.
Right.
You know, like I don't want to meet it where it is. Like, what can I do to diffuse it? What can I do to just like take a breath, take a second, and react in like an actual logical, reasonable way?
Yeah.
Gosh, and that is so huge, Afton, and you've really tapped into something that, you know, a lot of what happens, like you'll have an argument with each other and you'll go, I can't believe I said that again, or I can't believe what happened. And there's a lot of things going on, you know, your brain chemistry, your body chemistry that's kind of hijacking you.
Yes, and you feel that. Like you can feel like something's hijacking my body and I no longer have control of what happens.
It feels like the spawn of Satan.
Yes.
I mean, like you're like, I can't believe this. pausing and breathing actually helps cleanse that and pauses that. So what people have been saying, you need to slow down and take a deep breath. There's really a lot of great science behind that, why that matters. And it is that breathing is getting oxygen back to your brain, back into your body, and it is a pause. What's the passage? Be slow to speak, slow to angry, and quick to listen. So there's those things, God, the Bible's so relevant, but in those moments after, and I think just so huge that's good advice for any of us at any point is, okay, let me pause, let me breathe, and let's take a break. And sometimes some of us, we need to walk out of the room, right?
Mm-hmm. CJ, you have a really good... Now, yours isn't technically like something that's changing your reaction, but I love this like tool that you
that's
gave.
why I asked the question. So what the next time you catch yourself overreacting to? So I can play you can play it both ways.
Yeah.
Right.
And very similar to what you were saying, like we all do feel that moment where it's like slow motion where you realize I can take this either way I want to. And you were suggesting obviously the pause and that kind of thing. And in that moment, my one simple thing that I need to do a better job of doing is asking for a do-over in that moment. Like I know I'm exploding about the internet or I'm getting really frustrated and I know it's like the tension's rising and I know I can either just take it over the cliff and ruin our night and just really set the tone, or as that tension is escalating, I can be like, okay, you know what? I realize I'm overreacting about a really silly thing and I'm going to pause and ask for a do-over.
Do you actually out loud ask for a do-over?
So yeah, so we actually learned this from our premarital counselors.
Did you get $15 off of your marriage certificate?
we did. Yeah, it was great. But they said that they do this, and it's been so helpful for us when we do it. But basically, when we're in the middle of a silly fight or things are just really starting to get intense, we just say pause, and someone just has to say, we need a do-over, or I need a do-over. And okay, you know what? I just blew up about the internet. I need a do-over. And sometimes we'll literally just I need to walk out of the room and re-walk back into this room. And it eliminates that I'm sorry I blew up. I'm sorry I overreacted. Yeah. And now we're kind of in a sad state of affairs.
Because sometimes that's even a barrier to even react in a positive way because you're like, great, now I'm going to have to say I'm sorry. And now I have to swallow my I've got to and you just I'm just going to keep plowing through here, Marty.
I'm committed.
Yeah. Yeah. The phrase
true.
do-over is just a chance for basically me to say, I realized what I just did was an overreaction. It was stupid. And I just need to go back and fix it before this ruins everything.
I like to pretend when you say do-over, you immediately start reenacting the scene backwards. Yes. And then actually start over.
That's we'll discuss that on another episode, how we do that part.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Ted, what do you have?
You guys have John Gottman, one of the greatest researchers on marriage. He calls what you guys are talking about a repair attempt. He said that great marriages have this thing called a repair attempt where something starts going south, and most couples aren't intentional about it. If they're have great marriages, they've just kind of stumbled on it. But for you got intentional with the do-over.
Right.
That's I want to stop this before it escalates.
Yeah, of course, it's a repair attempt. Exactly.
I need that term too.
Right.
Well, there you do. If I want to put the brakes on, I want to breathe. I know you guys I'm such a geek, aren't I?
Yeah.
Anyway,
you're good.
You're just so much smarter than us.
Right.
No, I just look at one thing for 16 years.
Ted's yes, what you guys are doing, you young ones, is called
listeners. I'm being made fun of, and it's okay. I deserve it. No, I think for me, when Nancy's, because she has so much. Again, we have 3 kids. She works full time. I work full time. We travel. We speak, and all this. She's got a lot going on. I think what I need to do better. I'm okay with. I let her, when she's having a reaction, whatever. I think I need to lean in and try to understand more what she's feeling. Because I'm a good helper, but I'm not necessarily a great stopping and going, wow, this is frustrating you. Because we have this thing in our house. We'll say, do you want me to fix this or fill this? 99% of the time she'll just say fill it, which to a man it makes no sense.
What do you mean by fill
what's
it?
that mean?
Fix it, or I think I just spoke my Alabama accent right there. Fill it, feel, F-E-E-L. Do you want me to feel?
I thought, did you hear?
You want me to fix it?
I 100% heard fill.
Do you want to
fill it?
Let me fill your emotions with other
things. That's what I thought.
Me too.
That must be a.
Do you want me to fix this or feel this?
Thank you, Afton.
It rhymes with peel.
Yeah, peel. Thank you.
I got it.
I got this calico cat accent from Alabama and
I think
California.
that's really cool. It's
but do you fix it or do you, Afton?
Do I fix it or feel it?
Yeah. Like for that, well, I'm just saying, no, I just needed you to repeat the word.
Oh, yeah.
She just wants me.
Fix
She
it
just
or
wants
feel
me.
it.
I need to, and I think I need to do a better job in those moments of just, trying to serve and do things.
Okay. Now that I know what you're talking about, that is so true. And okay, recently I've been coming home and like I'll like vent to Hudson about something. Like I'm like, can you believe? And I don't understand why. And so and so said. And he gets equally. He'll like all of a sudden get like equally angry and be like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You're justified. And then we're both just like angry and we're like, and I'm like, I just need you to just listen and not make it worse.
Yeah, don't agree with
like,
me right now.
Just let me say it and like don't raise to my level.
I just needed to vent.
Yeah.
Well, and that is the thing. Like that would be some of our biggest fights is she would tell me a problem is wrong and I would start giving her solutions.
Yes.
And then she would never like my solutions.
Yeah.
It wasn't that she didn't like my solutions. She didn't like how I was responding. She just wanted me to listen.
Yeah.
She just went out.
And she had probably already thought of the solutions.
Times 10 and had better ones. This is the funny thing.
Yeah.
She just went on a girls trip and they do it. This is the 11th year in a row. Her and 3 girlfriends go out and she'll come back and we talked about this. We talked about this. And I said, well, what did they say about it? Well, nothing. They just listen. And as a man, I'm going, well, that's not helpful. But for her, it's her love language, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going, I need to learn from what makes a girls trip work.
So what do you say? Are you just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what's the difference? Instead of offering solutions.
Yeah. I think it's just, gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That stinks. But it's got to be sincere or she'll smell it a million miles off. But it's just,
it can't be sassy, Afton. It can't
I
be
know.
sassy.
I would have said it like, I know I'm sorry. Is that correct?
That's
I know I'm sorry.
That's less sass than your normal sass.
Yeah, I think it's more of I can agree with the emotion. I just can't try to fix it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not going to go any more geek. I was about to go geek again. We'll save it for another episode.
I love it.
Well, on that note, guys, that was a great conversation. I just know for me, just realizing that silly fights aren't just silly, that's huge because they reveal, like you said, Ted, they reveal the brokenness and the stuff that's in us. And that in those moments, we can change our reaction. And that's something I know I can probably put into practice this week. And I hope it's something that you, the listener, can put into practice this week along with us. Thanks for joining us for the Married People podcast. We hope that today's episode has helped you realize that marriage is a little easier than you think. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And while you're there, leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. Your review helps us make this podcast better and get these conversations in front of more people who need to hear them. And finally, for more great resources to make your marriage better, check out our blog at marriedpeople.org. And join us for next week's episode when we'll be asking the question, is having fun in your marriage extra or essential? Until next time, I'm CJ.
I'm Afton.
I'm Ted.
And thank you for listening.